Do what thou will be the whole piece of law.
Welcome back. Or if this is your first time, welcome. Or if you're calling into the show, welcome. I'm not Larry King. And you may ask why I'm bringing up Larry King. Well, first of all, because this is a radio show, and you should be listening because there will be very little audio editing just until the beginning of March. That means 2 more weeks of this, and then we'll be high budget to compensate. Secondly, the reason why I mentioned Larry King is because the person I want to talk about today is really only known because of Larry King. Now, I will admit, I'm very guilty of not knowing who Larry King is because I'm not over 50, but I know he is a very prolific radio talk show host, and he kind of talks like this.
Well,
hey,
it's 5 o'clock somewhere, not
what
here,
are
mind
these
you.
people talking about? I'm Larry King. I can't do that. But the only reason why Larry King is relevant to this story as a talk show host is because the person we're going to talk about today is solely documented through Larry King, and is one of those people that the internet has kind of forgotten about. Because I was a little pressed to find a topic for this video, and when I consulted one of my closest confidants, they said to me, well, there's always a kook out there for you to cover. And I thought, I should consult the book. And now when I say the book, it's probably going to be my next major series after I wrap up Francis E. Deck, which the reason I've been putting him off is because I don't want to neglect him to a low quality video. I'll probably do a Francis E. Deck video, and then the milk video that I promised, and then something. If I've forgotten, please remind me down in the comments, because I can only keep a topic for so long in my head until it kind of falls into my ideas notepad, at which point it no longer exists. But I've been beating around the bush for too long. Who are we talking about? Well, we're gonna be talking today about a man named Norman Bloom. I can't do this in Larry King. It's already killing my entire voice. I want to talk about a man named Norman Bloom, also known as the Numbers Man. Now, what makes him special? Well, he has a lot of the things that are very close to my heart. First of all, he was very into spreading a lot of flyers around everywhere. Now, this wasn't the Francis E. Deck completely scattered around, completely no pattern. This was hung in places you could see, and I want to say random, nigh incomprehensible numbers Hebrew stuff, because all of his flyers generally had, first of all, numbers, second of all, Hebrew on them, third of all, some message that he was the second coming of Christ, or the Messiah as a whole, which, if you take into account that he is a person of Jewish faith, seems a little heretical, but I'm not going to contest him. And since there's very little on him, this is not going to be too much of a personal life story, but we do know a few key things about his life. First of all, he was not always like this, which means he has an origin story, which, if I've been told by the top grossing series of all time, namely Marvel, that's been run into the ground, or Cape Slop, I guess I could call it, is the nice name for it, being popular, I can tell you that origin stories make people 10 times more appealing. So let me tell you this man's origin story. First of all, we know he was married. Second of all, we know he's married because he got divorced. Third of all, we know that he was generally of even temper, even after he became his new Numbers form. And I call him John Numbers. I know there's a significant... Hold on, I gotta look up who John Numbers is. No, it's the guy who... Oh, no, it's the guy who beat Cosmo. Ah, no, no. I'm gonna call him John Numbers, mainly because there are too many
The Jewish
Kanye to get an accurate picture that I could say will concretely be him. Because he passed in 1989, which means he was about the same age as Francis E. Deck, if we're going by the same lifespan deal. After his divorce, he was homeless. And by homeless, I mean he lived out of the back of the ice cream truck that he sold out of. Now, I assume this gave him a lot of free time, because this reeks of a man with too much free time. You know, here's a guy with free time. Because he had a moment. He had a turning point, which, the book I'm consulting, comes in 1962, when he had, like, a Hobby Lobby type deal. Using the money, well, not exactly Hobby Lobby. He didn't steal, like, 3,000 Iraqi artifacts. But in the Hobby Lobby sense of he wanted to vindicate the Bible, because I may have mentioned he was Jewish before. However, he seemed to also be just a general holy man, kind of read a bunch of holy texts, but all the other ones outside of the Bible and the Torah are up for debate. What happened was was he hired Carnegie Hall for a concert. And he had a brother that went to this concert that said, yes, it was impressive. However, almost nobody showed up. Now, this would be bad if you hadn't spent an exorbitant amount of money to hire out Carnegie Hall. So you have no wife, you have now no money, and your brother leaves you a note on one of the flyers that's left in the hall. Let's just say you're John Numbers. I'm gonna keep calling him John Numbers, mainly because I've fallen into a habit recently of calling everything I don't know John blank. But that's enough character breaks. Let's get back into it. Let's pretend you are John Numbers, the numbers man. You're about to come into your Sona, your new state of mind that you don't know will overtake you yet. You've just spent all of your money, however much it may be, all of your money, to hire out the entirety of Carnegie Hall to vindicate your beliefs on religion. No one shows up except for a few close friends, maybe your family, if you're lucky. You know your brother at least showed up. And after the performance, as you're walking through the hall, you come across a note scribbled on one of the concert programs, and it reads, quote, "My dear brother, I guess you are right, and I am the fool. No critics, no audience except friends and relatives. Even though I distribute 1,600 tickets, this will probably change many things for me. One thing will not change. He is my rock, my shield, and my strength. In him do I place my trust. Your loving brother, Norm." Now, this flowers from a minor obsession into a complete all-consuming void. We are talking Francis E. Deck level obsession. I feel like I want to say he's schizophrenic, but I'm not positive, because I'm going to call this a meltdown. He begins to write down a bunch of things related to numbers, like license plates. He keeps dollar bills with quote-unquote significant numbers, and he tried to get a number off a subway turnstile and was arrested at least one time. And his family was like, this guy's obviously insane. He's writing down numbers, distributing these massive flyers for all these other things. And whenever he gets into this institution, he's just like, I'll lie my way out. It'll be fine. And he manages to convince everyone every single time that he's fine, just like Francis E. Deck. Wow, this I knew this story from somewhere. Just reading about this guy is both equal parts tragic and, I don't want to say fascinating, but it's something, because numbers are always alluring, you know. They're always so alluring, and everyone that comes across him just describes him as like this super nice guy who, you know, serves ice cream in the summer and quote numerical good news. That's another thing that I imagine trying to field as a question. Imagine if you're buying ice cream one day and the guy you're buying ice cream from has a bunch of random prices, and he's like, oh yeah, like why is this one $2.22? And he's like, well, because the significance of the number 22. He's like, I wrote a flyer on that about a political campaign. And you say, what are you talking about? And he says, yeah, there's only one independent man for president in 88. There's 22 zingers under the Freedom of Information Act, IOU number 22. In case you're wondering, this is a real flyer. I can't find any scans of it online, so if you see a terrible picture that I took out of the book that I own, I apologize. But this comes from the book Kooks, The Extent of Human Belief. And that is probably going to be my next major video series, if you want a spoiler. But some of the examples include number 2. The last 2 presidents died on the 22nd. LBJ, January 22nd. JFK, November 22nd. 22's on the ballot. Number 9. Love on your telephone dial. Adds up to, you got that right, 22. LOVE equals 22. Back in the day when you had to press the numbers for telephone numbers. Oh man, I'm so old. We had to click on the flip phone for a different letter. Oh man, I'm so old. Another one. If love has made you smile, laugh, please have a nice day. IOU 22, all equal 22. And then there's a P.O. box number. And the bottom says, oh, there are 22 reasons to vote for Love 22, the independent Greenback Party write-in candidate for President of the United States every 2+2 years. There are 22 platform planks in the Love 22 campaign for the all-new government, among them Proposition 22, which seeks to axe taxes. Reprinted here is a flyer from the 88 campaign. That's another one. Imagine talking to your ice cream guy, and he says, oh yeah, the reason why that's $2.22 is because you should vote for my political candidate, which is a little weird, and then you say, okay, and you pay for your ice cream, and he says, don't worry, I've mathematically proven that I'm the messiah of all mankind. And you say, what? And he says, yeah, the one God brought the United States to birth in 1776. Can you tell that this one is about 1776? And he has an obsession with the state of Israel, obviously. This is like prime time AIPAC. Idea 888-888-1776. OMG. I feel this is even a little schizophrenic for me. But there are very few scans of his flyers. Mainly because his children, after his unfortunate passing in 1989, scavenged his entire house for stuff about them, how greedy. But, however, they tossed all these as trash. Now, see, this, if I were a John Numbers guy, Norman Bloom Numbers Man guy, this is where I would be furious. If I had known that everything that I wanted had just been garbaged one day in like one event that I could have stopped if I had been alive in 1989 and known of this guy and known of his passing and known his kids, so I could have been at his estate to scan everything, I would have done something about it. At least Francis E. Deck is a little more tolerable based on the fact where it was, oh yeah, he mailed everything out to random people and now it's in the hands of random fate. It's a little more acceptable in my opinion. However, the copies we do have are allegedly from Bloom himself, because he used to send them to Larry King, at least so the story goes. If you want a quote-unquote explanation as to what the numbers are, because I'm not listening to all the calls he put into Larry King, I'm just going to go off the one out of the book. He explains it allegedly in numerical significance. But I want to, before I get into that, explain a bit more the nitty-gritty, because apparently, if I'm finding another source from the New Yorker, he had a mental examination before he passed, and apparently he had suffered a brain hemorrhage that left him with a enormous lesion in the rear half of the left hemisphere of his brain, which apparently physically crippled him as well as mentally crippled him. And to this researcher, he was a man of aboutisms. I like it because one of the quotes from the article in the New Yorker, by the way, it's called The Numbers Guy by Jim Holt, written in 2008. A quote from the article says he was called the Approximate Man, and, quote, the Approximate Man lived in a world where a year comprised of about 350 days and an hour about 50 minutes, where there were 5 seasons and where a dozen eggs amounted to 6 or 10. Diane asked him, the researcher, Diane, asked him to add 2 plus 2 several times and received answers ranging from 3 to 5, but he noted he never offers a result as absurd as 9, unquote. He is a little bit more illuminated by this article. It gives him a third dimension, because in the book Kooks, they have a vested interest in having these people remain crazy, and I kind of like bringing them back down to earth a little. There's also a book written by the researcher called The Numbers Sense, if this is a topic that appeals to you. Another thing, it doesn't have to do with much. There is a preview of a book called Nerds on Wall Street, which is like one of the only 3 books that mentions this guy. And on the article about the Numbers Guy, it says 6, 7. No, the jokes write themselves. The significant numbers. The guy who can read the mind of God. Where do we put him? 6, 7 notes. And something more significant that he also likes to touch on is his love of baseball and numbers. Namely the Yankees and the Mets and the Giants. Apparently there's also a book written by Carl Sagan on him. There's not much. I'm trying to put together everything I can. The thing that makes this worse is I'm listening to a number station in the background. I feel like I'm genuinely going insane. Where's the significance? I heard a number station go 6, 7 and it twitched. But I want to play you out with the significance of the numbers according to the man himself. The man who claimed to be the Messiah and that God could be proven through math. So, before I do that, I'm going to please humbly ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. I know these videos are a bit rambly as of recent. I will try and tighten them up for a renewed March spirit push, especially for the 1-year anniversary of the channel in April. Way too long, in my opinion, but maybe one of these days, my star will shine. Only you can help me, my only hope for the future, numerically significant viewer. I can tell you're viewer number 22 or some derivative of 2, but not some viewer as absurd as 9,728,412. That would be absurd. So, I please ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. Please mind our dust. We know this is a developing time. Thank you for listening, most importantly. And if there's any criticism that you think could help improve my work, please let me know. It's more valuable than anyone saying, another good video. I would rather you be super critical so I can improve. I need stuff that sets me apart. Guess what? I want criticism. I will not ignore it. I will confront it head on and address it. But you came here for the secrets of the universe and how I can prove God through math. Well, by stealing the work of John Bloom. No, I had two choices. I could have said John Numbers or Norman Bloom. Well, citing the work of Norman Bloom, I am going to read you how he explained the significance of all the numbers. So, as I play you out, he said their significance is, quote, 39 equals YHVH ECHOD hyphen one God or minus. Maybe it's Yahweh Echad minus one God equals 39. I alone teach that God brought New York Mets to victory 13 years after 26th Yom Kippur, parentheses, Yom Kippur War 73 at 39th Yom Kippur of Israel, parentheses, not closing but opening, signing his name into the New York Mets and into baseball and into world history. So while I watch game and record all the signs of God's creation, as I alone teach, I hold that publication in my hands, and when Giants win by scoring 39 points and signing God's name and the idea of 9-10, the double clockwork man lives in, and 1776 and 1777 and 9 cycles, 47 to 48 and 10, 1967. I show those present at Fairlawn AC where I watched that page and explained how Giants victory fulfilled all the ideas on that page that I had taught Congress and the faculties of the 13 universities, opening parenthesis again, only I in all the earth did these things and prayed this prayer to my Father, and as I prayed so it was done, and one God signed his name 39 in the 39th year of Israel as a sign to the Jewish people, opening parenthesis again, and all of mankind, closed parenthesis, that he is fulfilling his eternal promise. Behold, I make all things new.